Hi, welcome back to the Fastball Profits. My name is Rob Scuderick. Thanks for joining me tonight. Before we get into Week 13 waiver wire considerations, guys, that we think you should consider for this upcoming week here, I just want to say thank you to all you out there that have subscribed, watch our videos. We appreciate it. We look forward to continuing to grow our product, continue to grow the site, improve the site, to offer you guys the best information possible. Before we get into the Week 13 waiver wire considerations for you guys, I want to say that I'm feeling a little bit under the weather tonight. I have to admit, I've kind of got this cold, but I'm excited because in spite of that, really excited about football right now. My fantasy teams are doing well. I'm in 4 leagues, made the playoffs in 4 leagues, and above that, even my Minnesota Vikings. So I've been a Vikings fan my whole life. We're doing really well, so I'm pretty excited about that. They had a huge victory on Thanksgiving. So we're gonna get into Week 13 waiver wire considerations. Now, for a lot of you, this is the last week of the regular season. Now, some of you go to Week 14, but most leagues end in Week 13. The playoffs start in Week 14. So for a lot of you, this is crunch time. And before we kind of get into that, we realize that this time of year it's slim pickings. It's going to be really hard for you to find some guys out there who's been picked over in the market. But we think if you're diligent, if you look closely, you think that you can find somebody. Another thing that we want to caution people is you got to stay away from feelings and from emotions. There's always going to be that random player out there that's widely available is going to have a big day, and you have to really pull back and analyze, okay, is this just a fluke or is this something that we can really put our trust in? A good example of that is Jonas Gray years ago for the New England Patriots. Went out, had 199 yards and 4 TDs, but since then he's out of the league now, hasn't done a whole lot. So when we look at waiver wire claims, a lot of times we're going to talk about guys that are available maybe only 10, 20, or 30% of leagues. And the reason why we do that is we want you guys to pick up players that are consistent, somebody that you can trust. And so a lot of the players we mentioned aren't widely available. So we'll give you a multitude of names. So maybe he's not available in your league, but between the maybe 5, 10, or 15 names that we give you, we feel like you can find somebody that you can trust. I can talk to you about a player that's 90% available, 95% available, but if I can't trust him, then I don't want you to put him in your lineup and get a 0, especially in Week 13 when you need to win. So we're going to give you a lot of names, a lot of things to consider. Once again, you need production this time of year, not pipe dreams. That's why we approach the way that we do. Early injury considerations right now. Well, Greg Olsen came back this week. I know a lot of you were looking at. Some of you asked for advice. We gave advice that maybe for some of you he'd be a good play. And he came out, had the first catch of the game for the Panthers, and then he left the game with a foot injury. Now, I don't know if that's the same foot that he injured earlier this year. Hopefully it isn't, but he is out right now. Another one out there is Amari Cooper. He got hit very hard today, left the field on a stretcher. He's in concussion protocol, and the way he left the field, it's not likely he's going to play in Week 13, so Amari Cooper is probably going to be out. Damian Williams left the game with a pectoral injury, so those are some of the injuries that we're aware of. There'll be others that will come in the next day or two. So let's get into some guys that you should consider coming up here Week 13 or maybe even beyond. This one's Rod Smith. I know a lot of people are going to be excited this week. I think he's going to be high in terms of how many people pick him up. He's available in 86% of leagues. He had a touchdown on a Thursday on Thanksgiving there. He saw more carries. Now, many felt that he was going to have a bigger role once Ezekiel Elliott was out, and it appears that he's starting to eke out kind of a bigger role in that offense. But I want to kind of caution you guys there to hold your horses on this pick a bit. Some of you may have to roll with a guy like him because you have no other options. He had 2 receptions and 9 carries in the game. It hardly elicits a lot of excitement on my part. 2 catches, 9 carries. You can't really trust that moving forward. Another reason why I would really tell you to be careful not getting too excited about Rod Smith. Right now, the Dallas offense is a mess. Without Ezekiel Elliott, this offense is really struggling with the ball. Dak Prescott doesn't look like he did the first 6 games of the season. And then if you look at another concern that I have with Rod Smith is Alfred Morris is running the ball pretty well. His yards per carry have been good. He's been effective running the ball. So it's not like all of a sudden Rod Smith's going to get all these carries. It's going to be a running back by committee in the meantime. And so he's a guy that maybe you need to roll with. I consider him more of a running back 3-4 at this point, depending upon the depth of your league. Can't trust him too much. Now, another one to consider out there is the running back situation for the Patriots. Now let's look at Dion Lewis out there. He's available in 17% of leagues. So in about 20% of leagues, he's available. He continues to operate as a lead back. I think it's the 3rd week in a row now that Mike Gillislee was not activated. And today, Dion Lewis had over 100 yards, 6 weeks in a row. He's had double-digit carries. So he's a guy that you can trust. He's become their go-to guy there. Now, he has a lower ceiling for a couple of reasons. One, he's not a big back. He's not very physical. I think he stands at about 205. And so for a back who's going to get a lot of carries, he's not going to get 20, 25, 30 carries a game. They're going to limit his carries. And then he also plays an offense that loves to spread the ball around. So he's a guy that you certainly can roll with out there. You can trust. In fact, he's about the only running back on this team that I would feel comfortable starting at this point. Now, I know some of you guys are going to get excited about Rex Burkhead. And I actually like Rex Burkhead as a player. He's available in 50% of leagues. But as a fantasy player, it's hard to rely on him. Now, he's had 3 TDs in the last 3 weeks. And he is heavily used in the passing game. But it's really hard to trust any New England running back. They're very fickle. Once again, we talked about how they like to spread the ball around. You look at just a couple weeks ago, White had huge value. Now, the last 2 weeks, he's kind of fallen off the face of the earth. He's disappeared a little bit. So really, the only running back that I feel comfortable trusting in this whole situation here is not Rex Burkhead, but it'd probably be Dion Lewis at that point. He's available in about 20% of leagues. Another guy out there you need to consider is Isaiah Crowell. Isaiah's available in 21% of leagues. Now, this week he plays the Chargers, give the 4th most points to running backs. Now, if you take away Isaiah Crowell's game against the Jaguars, and now the Jaguars are very, very good defense. If you take that game out of there and you look at his other 3 games, he's looked really good. And the other 3 games minus that Jaguars game, he's totaled 249 rushing yards, and he's had a 5.7 on yards per carry. And so he's looking very productive. He's looking strong. And he's also been worked into the passing game. He's a guy out there that is your lead back at this point. He's available on 21% of leagues. He's a guy that you could roll with out there. Another guy out there that's surprisingly still available in 20% of leagues is Latavius Murray. Available in 20% of leagues. I'm kind of surprised at this point that he still is. He should be on your bench. Even if he's not a guy that you want to start, somebody should have picked him up and stashed him in your league. He's got a decent play next week against Atlanta, who give up a decent amount of points to running backs. If you look at the last 5 games, Latavius Murray has 5 touchdowns. He's had 7 consecutive games with double-digit carries, so he's definitely a go-to guy there. He's a legitimate running back, too, at this point. And so if he's out there in 20% of leagues, to 20% of you that I'm talking to, he's available in your leagues. Pick this guy up and play him if you need to. Next I want to talk about there is Drake. If you look at Drake at this point, he's available in 44% of leagues. He had a touchdown today. A receiving touchdown. Now, he's been kind of quiet. He was a little bit quiet today until Williams left the game injured. The week before, he was quiet. The 2 games before that, though, he looked good. His yards per carry were good. It looked like he was going to be the lead runner. Now, he's in the dreaded running back by committee with Damian Williams. So what would give him a boost? Why would we say that you should consider him? Well, Williams left today with a shoulder or pectoral injury. It sounds to me the extent of the injury is pretty serious. Sounds like to me like Williams is going to miss some time. That means that Drake becomes the go-to guy there. He's going to see a majority of the carries. He's going to get a lot of the targets in the passing game as far as the running backs go. He's a guy now that just had huge value. So what I would do is pick him up, watch the injury report for Williams. And if Williams is out, you could roll him out as a running back too. If Williams plays, then he drops down to about a running back 3 or 4, depending upon your league size. Austin Ekeler. He's available in 66% of league. He's really etched out a nice role in that offense. Each week he's getting more carries, more targets. But right now at this point, he's nothing more than a PPR play in deeper leagues. I wouldn't pick him up in any standard leagues. If you're in a deeper league and you're in a PPR, he has some value for you out there, available in 66% of leagues. Frank Gore. Frank Gore is available in 31% of leagues out there. Now, he's had 17 carries 3 weeks in a row. Now, he's 34 years old, yet they're still giving the ball. He's been consistent, like I said, 3 weeks in a row, 17 carries. Had a touchdown today, and he's a lead back. So he's not pretty. He's not exciting. He's not going to blow up for you. He's not the running back he was a few years ago. At 34 years old, he's not going to have 25 carries and 150 yards. You're just not going to see that. And he's got a tough matchup coming up against the Jags. So he's a running back by 3 consideration. But for some of you that are really desperate, he's a guy that you can play. I would expect maybe 15 carries for 60 yards, maybe a TD. He's kind of touchdown dependent at this point in terms of his productivity. LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette Blount, well, he's available in 33% of leagues. Now, the trade with Jay Ajayi got traded to Miami, and first 2 weeks, Jay Ajayi looked great. His yards per carry were unbelievable. He ripped off some long runs. People felt like they brought him in for a reason. I'm that guy, and I still think Jay Ajayi next year is going to have a huge role in that offense. But when he was brought in this year, the coaches kept saying that Blount's going to continue to have a huge role in the offense. Now, when you hear that, that's coach speak. Oftentimes, they'll say things like, yeah, he's going to get a lot of carries, he's still involved in the offense. But when it comes right down to it, he won't. So far, they seem to be sticking to that promise of keeping him highly involved. In fact, today, he out-touched all running backs in terms of touches. He had 15 carries for 97 yards. So LeGarrette Blount looks like he's maintained his value even with the trade for Ajayi. The one thing I would consider with him, he's got a lower ceiling. And here's why I would say he's a lower ceiling. He's a guy that maybe you could pick up. One, this offense runs through Carson Wentz's arm, obviously. And then you have other running backs that still carries and targets. So he's a guy that you could roll with, but I would say he falls into probably closer to a running back 3, not a running back 1 or 2 at this point. I definitely wouldn't consider starting him in a PPR league. Kind of, this is a pick you want to project maybe a week or 2 ahead. If you already know you're going to get into the playoffs, definitely week 14 or 15. That's Ty Montgomery. He's available in 29% of leagues. And once he is back from his rib injury, he should take over as a lead back. He has an outside shot of returning week 13, but most likely he's going to come back week 14. Now, if you look at Jamal Williams had 2 touchdowns tonight. He had a decent game in the receiving game. As far as running the balls go, he struggled against yards per carry. Were down quite a bit. And so once Montgomery comes back, he'll be the lead back there. So you can pick him up, stash him, and he's a guy that if you're desperate or if you need to, maybe in a week or two, you could play him in the playoffs with the right matchups there. Semaj peagreen. Well, he's available in 21% of leagues. Highly available out there. I'm not a big fan of this guy. At least I wasn't. I'm starting to warm up to the idea of him. He struggled all year long. His yards per carry were brutal. He looked like he was stuck in mud. He looked like he was just overmatched at the professional level. But then 2 weeks ago, he exploded with 23 carries, 117 yards in a TD. How's he going to follow that up? Was it a fluke? Well, he followed that up with 24 carries, 100 yards. Those 2 games, he's at a combined 4.62 yards per carry. So this guy looks like he is really rounding into a legitimate running back consideration at this point. With Chris Thompson out for the year and Robert Kelly out for at least a couple more games, it sounds like it's going to be his job going forward. And so he's a guy that you can roll out as a running back too from this point going forward. Semaj peagreen out there in 21% of leagues. Another guy out there, Orleans Darkwa. So Orleans, we've talked about him a lot lately. He's still available in about 27% of leagues. Now this week he plays Oakland. He's got a very nice matchup. Oakland gives up the 5th most points to running backs. So here's the upside for Darkwa. He's the lead back. He's not sharing carries. He is the go-to guy. His yards per carry have been good out there. He's been productive at 4.6. So he's getting the ball. He's getting the carries. The downside for him, he plays for a terrible offense, and right now Eli Manning's not playing very well, and so he's not going to get probably 20 carries. A lot of times they fall behind and have to throw the ball. So he's a guy that you can trust. He's going to get the carries, but he has a lower ceiling, but he is available in about 30% of leagues out there. Orleans Darkwa is the lead guy. Another guy out there is Alec Collins. Available in about 30% of leagues. He's got a great matchup this week against Detroit. He'll get the 3rd most points to running backs. Now, he's very similar to Darkwa in terms of he's done well this year. His yards per carry have been good, but he's not in a great offense. Therefore, that lowers his ceiling. I think that hurts Alec Collins a little bit. Danny Woodhead being back steals some targets in the passing game. What I would do is this video is being done Sunday night, but watch Monday night's game and just see how he does, how he plays. Maybe things will happen. It'll trend him up or down in terms of where he's at. But he's a guy that you could roll with out there, about 30% available in leagues. So we get some quarterback considerations this week. Let's get a Minnesota Vikings fan. I love what Case Keenum has done. What a welcome surprise he's been for a lot of us fans. He's available in 54% of leagues. Early in the year, I'll have to admit, I'm not going to lie, I caution people away from him. I feel like he's a game manager. He's not going to put up great fantasy numbers. Well, this week coming up, he plays Atlanta. And Atlanta gives up the 7th most points to quarterbacks. Now, he started slow the first 4 games. Case Keenum was nothing to write home about. But in the last 4 games, he's averaged 289 passing yards per game and 2.25 passing touchdowns per game. He's got a nice group of weapons around him with Thielen, Diggs, Rudolph, McKinnon, so he's got some weapons. And if you look at the last 4 games, the Minnesota Vikings offense has really come alive. Now, we know the strength of this team is their defense, but in the last 4 games, their offense has averaged 31.25 points per game. Now they're playing Atlanta. Another thing that I think bodes well for this matchup this week for Case Keenum is that Matt Ryan's starting to play better. So between Case Keenum and Matt Ryan playing better, there should be a lot of points scored in this game. Keep him active in the passing game. They need to throw the ball late in the game. And so he's a guy that you could actually roll out this week and feel comfortable playing. Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers is available in about 20% of leagues out there. Had a big Thanksgiving day, over 400 yards, a couple TDs. Now he faces Cleveland. Cleveland gives up a lot of points to quarterbacks, so it's a quarterback-friendly matchup there. Josh McCown. Josh McCown is available in 69% of leagues. He plays Kansas City. Kansas City gives up the 14th most points to quarterbacks. And right now the Chiefs are really, and they're just struggling. They started hot, and they're struggling right now. They brought Darrelle Revis in to play corner for them. To me, that just appears like a desperate move. When this is a guy that nobody else wanted. He was a great cornerback at one point, but he's obviously lost a step or two, and there's a reason why he wasn't signed. When they bring a guy like that in, it shows me that this defense, the team as a whole, is struggling. And then you look today, Josh had a really nice game today against the Panthers, which why the Carolina Panthers have a very good pass defense going into the game. Today, Josh lit him up for 307 yards and 3 TDs, and he's had a nice year. The other thing that's really helped him is the development of Robbie Anderson. He's been a revelation to that team, in fact, to football as a whole and fantasy football community, but he's helped Josh quite a bit. So Josh McCown, available in 69% of leagues, has a good matchup this week against Kansas City, 14th most points to quarterbacks. Guy that's available out there in 98% of leagues is Tamas Savage. Plays Tennessee, who gives up the 9th most points to quarterbacks. He's been sufficient. He has been great. Here's what I would say for those that might be considering him. I wouldn't personally be comfortable using him. I think it's a bit of a stretch to trust him at this point, especially week 13 when you need to win. I would probably look elsewhere. Andy Dalton, available in 40% of leagues. Since week 2, after week 2, from week 3 on, he's got 18 touchdown passes to only 4 picks. He's been really good. 18 touchdown passes, once again, to only 4 interceptions. Now, he does play Pittsburgh, who going into this weekend give up the 3rd fewest points to quarterbacks. So where do you shake out with him? Well, tonight, Pittsburgh played Brett Hundley, and Hundley looked pretty good tonight against Pittsburgh. I still think when it's all said and done, Pittsburgh is a pretty good defense, but they are playing in Cincinnati. And Andy Dalton is trending upward. He is playing a lot better, so he's a guy that if you have to roll with, you can feel somewhat comfortable. I would expect that you could expect 225 yards and maybe 2 touchdowns in this game from Andy Dalton. Here's some quarterbacks you should avoid this week. Derek Carr, I like Derek Carr. I like him as a person. I like him as a quarterback. He's available in only about 11% of leagues. He plays the New York Giants. It would look like it's a great matchup. The New York Giants give up the 3rd most points to quarterbacks. Here's a concern that I have. Sounds like he's going to be without Crabtree. Sounds like Crabtree's going to be suspended for his fight with Talib, I think his name is. I don't know how to pronounce it. I know some of you get on me for my pronunciations. Bear with me today. I'm sick. And we said earlier that Amari Cooper is probably going to be out. He's in concussion protocol. He didn't look good. He left the game. So most likely, Derek Carr is going to play that game without Crabtree and Cooper in the game. And for that reason, I would say he's probably someone you want to avoid. Another guy you're probably going to want to avoid this week is Tyrod Taylor. He's available in 51% of the league. Now he plays New England. Now, if you look on paper, they give up a lot of points to quarterbacks. It looks like it's a decent play. But New England has really been what I would call a tale of 2 defenses at this point. The first 6 weeks, New England Patriots gave up 335 passing yards per game. And then the next 5 games, they only give up 220 passing yards per game. First 4 games, they give up 36.75 points per game. But the last 7, they're only giving up 13.14 points per game. So that defense has really turned a corner. They're playing really good right now. Tyrod Taylor is not a great quarterback to begin with. He doesn't have a lot of weapons there. And now he's playing New England. I would stay away from Tyrod Taylor this week. Another out there is widely available that you may consider is Eli Manning. Got a great matchup versus Oakland, but he's had no TD passes in the last 2 weeks. He's had single-digit points scored in fantasy 3 of 5, and it would be 4 of 5, except it took a last-second touchdown against San Francisco to salvage that game, and that was against a very weak San Francisco defense. That whole Giants team is kind of a mess. You'd be taking a lot of chances if you started Eli Manning. I would look for somebody else. Don't risk it. Another guy to sit is Jacoby Brissett. He's playing the Jags. Enough said, the Jags have a great defense. Sit Jacoby. Mitch Trubinsky, sit him this week. He's got a good matchup, but he's a rookie. He's only got 4 TDs in 7 games. Don't go there. Brett Hundley. Now, Brett Hundley looked well tonight. He played really well against Pittsburgh. But before today, he's been awful in 5 games. In 5 games, he had 2 touchdown passes to only 5 interceptions. And so I think I look elsewhere. And you have to remember, even though he had a good game tonight, every once in a while, every quarterback's going to do that. Earlier this year, Blake Bortles had a game where he had 4 touchdown passes and like 280 yards. It's going to happen. It's an anomaly. And so what he did tonight against Pittsburgh is an anomaly. I would stay away from him. Another one I would stay away from is Jimmy Garoppolo. Came in late in the game after Bethard got hurt. Threw a touchdown pass. I think he's a quarterback of the future. But before I go ahead and start Jimmy, I want to see him do a little bit. I want to see a full game under his belt. I also have to remember he doesn't have a lot of great weapons there. I wouldn't start Jimmy Garoppolo, especially week 13. For so many out there, you need to win this week. Don't start him. So before we get into the wide receivers, there's a lot of wide receivers out there right now that are available in that low range kind of wide receiver 4 to 5 category. There's lots and lots of them out there. A lot of teams run 3 wide receiver sets, so you times that times 32 teams. That puts a lot of wide receivers available. But none of them you can trust 100%. Yet some of you out there are going to need to start some of those wide receivers that fall into that wide receiver 4 to 5 category. And so they're not trustworthy. Their worth will fluctuate based on developments during the week. So you look at these guys, maybe like a Tyrell Williams, a Terrence Williams, things like that. Are they a guy that you can start? Well, a lot of times their value will fluctuate based on your scoring system. Are you in a half PPR? Are you in a full PPR? It'll be based on weather conditions, the quarterback's health. Is there a backup that's getting more playing time if they're rebuilding? Injury reports. Is the opposing wideout out for the game? That'll increase his targets. Or is a veteran's been sitting out for a couple games injured, now coming back? That's going to lower his targets. And so a lot of those guys that fall into that 4 or 5 category, there's a lot out there. But for me to sit down there today and say this is a guy that you need to start, when honestly none of them are trustworthy, to do you a disservice. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a midweek video. And we're going to talk about just wide receivers that fall into that wide receiver 4 to 5 category and where they're trending upwards based on new information that's come in the last few days, so that going into your final week of play, you can have as much information as possible on who you need to start or sit. So the first wide receiver that I want you to consider in the meantime, besides those guys that we talked about, is Josh Dotson. Former first-round pick, is available in 57% of leagues. Now, he's got 3 touchdowns on the year in 2 of the last 3 weeks. He's seen an increased role behind only Jamison Crowder at this point. He's the number 2 guy there, and he's got a good matchup versus Dallas this week. Another guy out there, now he's only available in 10% of leagues, which I know some of you are going to get on me again. Why are you talking about a guy that's not that readily available? He's only available in 10% of leagues, but that means he's available in 10% of leagues. That means 10% of you out there can pick this guy up, and you need to pick him up right now because he's playing great ball. He's had 6 touchdowns in the last 6 games. He's become Stafford's favorite target, and so if you're in that 10%, you need to grab this guy right now. He's more than just a stash that you can plug on the right thing. He's a guy that you could pick up and immediately play as a wide receiver too. He's playing great ball right now. Marvin Jones available in 10% of leagues, 6 TDs in the last 5 games. Another guy we've talked about a lot. We've talked a lot about this guy lately, and that's Robbie Anderson. He's available in 17% of leagues. Now, this is a guy that doesn't have, if you're in a dynasty league out there, I want to focus on you guys that are in keeper leagues, dynasty leagues. Robbie Anderson's only second-year wideout. He's 6'3". He's a huge target. He's got a lot of potential. He's got a huge dynasty value. He's now got 6 touchdowns in the last 5 games. Today he had 6 catches for 146 yards, and now he plays Kansas City this week, who gives up a lot of points to wide receivers. Robbie Anderson needs to get picked up. If you're in one of those 70% of leagues that he's available, pick him up. Jamison Crowder, available at 18% of leagues. Now, last 4 games, he's been on fire. Now, I was big on this guy going into this year. He started off slow. They brought in Terrell Pryor, some others that just didn't work out. And it was really kind of confusing for me why this guy wasn't putting up good numbers. Washington coaching staff came out and said they're going to get him more involved. Since they made that statement, he's really turned his year around. In the last 4 games, he's averaging 103 receiving yards per game. Jamison Crowder has been on fire. He's their best weapon that they've got at this point. You got to pick that guy up. He's available about 20% of leagues out there. There's been a lot of talk about Dede Westbrook. A lot of talk in the preseason about how talented this guy was. He was tearing it up in camp. They loved him. Then he got injured. He was just activated last week. Last week he had 6 targets for 3 catches and 35 yards. This week he had 10 targets for 6 catches and 41 yards. He's a guy that you could pick up. He's a guy that you could keep an eye on who has dynasty value. No, he does not have value for you to pick up and start next week. Blake Bortles is not that good. He has low ceiling and he's a rookie. So he's only somebody you keep an eye on in dynasty leagues. Goodwin. And so at this point, Goodwin, another guy you could consider out there. You look at 4 of the last 5 weeks, he's put up decent numbers out there. Jimmy Garoppolo's going to be taking over at quarterback this week. Coaching staff haven't said it. I'm going to go out there and say it publicly. This is the week that Jimmy Garoppolo starts. He's going to get a lot of pressure from the fans. He did well last minute or 2 that he was in the game. So Jimmy Garoppolo's going to start. That's going to increase Goodwin's value. Now, he's a former track star. So basically what you're going to see is low targets, low receptions, but good yardage totals. In fact, we've seen that 3 of the last 4 games. So he's about a wide receiver 4, I would say, in terms of his value. Another guy out there is Josh Gordon. We talked a lot about him. Guy with a ton of talent. Back in 2014, he tore it up. He was an All-Pro, 1,600 yards in 14 games. He's had a rocky last couple years, but sounds like he's back on track. And now the question is, what can we expect from this guy? Well, there's been people that thought he's going to come out and be great. There's others that said that he won't even see the playing field this year. But the coaches have come out now publicly and they have said that he will be active in Week 13 and he will play. Now, they did say they're going to work him in slowly, so he's a guy that you need to pick up. Don't start him Week 13. Put him on your bench. See how Week 13 goes. But he's got so much upside, so much potential that you've got to pick this guy up. He could save you in your fantasy playoffs. He could certainly help you in a dynasty league. Let's look at the Rams wide receivers. Well, let's look at Cooper Kupp right now. Cooper Kupp is available in 42% of leagues. Now, as you know, Robert Woods, which is the favorite target of Jared Goff, is out now. He's injured. Looks like he'll be out for a few more games. So what about the guys on that offense? Well, Cooper Kupp's available in 42% of leagues, like we said. And he's a guy that we had said last week is going to benefit the most from Woods being out. Well, today he goes out there and he has 8 catches for 116 yards. He has a huge game. Now he's got a great matchup coming up this week against Arizona, who gives up a lot of points to wide receivers. So Cooper Kupp is a guy that you can pick up, and while Woods is out, Kupp's value boosts up quite a bit. I would say that right now Cooper Kupp falls in a wide receiver 2 or 3. You can add value for him in a PPR league. Oftentimes he's in the slot. That's where he's going to excel. Another guy out there, Sammy Watkins. Today he had a good day. 4 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown. He has value as long as Robert Woods is out. When Robert Woods comes back, it totally bumps down his value. But with Robert Woods out, I would say he falls into a wide receiver 3 conversation right now. Another guy out there is Corey Coleman. We talked a lot about him also. He's available in 60% of leagues. Now, he's had tough matchups the last 2 weeks. He had to face the Bengals and the Jaguars, which were both very good against the pass. In spite of the fact that he faced 2 good defense, he still managed to have 6 catches for 80 yards. And this week, he had 3 catches, 64 yards. So he's been pretty productive in some very tough matchups. Now he plays the Chargers, who are much more generous to wide receivers. So Corey Coleman's a guy that you could pick up there. He's about a wide receiver 3 in most leagues. Zay Jones, rookie wide receiver, plays New England this week. Now, New England's playing a lot better on defense, but they're going to have to throw the ball a lot because we all know going into this game, unless something crazy happens, the Patriots are going to crush the Bills, and they're probably going to be playing from behind, which means that they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. With Calvin Benjamin out, Zay Jones has been the #1 wideout. He's had 2 touchdowns the last 3 weeks. He's increased his targets and his playing time. He's starting to really come into form. He's starting to develop as a rookie. He's a guy that you could play as a deeper wide receiver 3 to 4. Sterling Shepard, a lot of people forgot about him. He's available in about 20% of leagues. Now, the last 2 weeks he's been a non-factor. He hasn't been active. He hasn't played. He's missed games from migraines. If he plays, though, he's a guy that's the #1 wideout. He's very talented. He's about the only real wide receiver they have there. In the 2 games before he'd missed with his migraines, he had 5 catches, 70 yards, and he followed that up with 11 catches, 142 yards. He's available out there in about 20% of leagues, so you guys can pick this guy up. He could be a guy that could help you win a fantasy championship in your playoffs. Here's kind of a deeper pick out there for somebody who's Cordell Patterson. Amari Cooper, like I had said earlier, is probably going to be out with concussion. Took a devastating hit today, left the field, didn't look in good shape. And then it looks like Crabtree most likely is going to miss the game because of a suspension. And so who's their wideout going to be? Well, today after those 2 guys left the field, Cordell Patterson went out, had 3 catches for 72 yards. Also, they like to use him in the running game a lot. And so he's a guy that you could pick up and play if you're really desperate in some deeper leagues. Here's some tight end considerations. Rickey Jones, available in 99% of leagues. So last week he goes out and he has 3 catches, 54 yards, and 2 TDs. Is that a fluke? Well, if you ran out and you grabbed that guy, I thought it was a little bit premature because you really need to see it was the first catches he had for the year. He is a rookie. Well, how did the Texas A&M rookie follow that up after last week? Well, you know he followed that up by this week going out against a very good Jags defense. He had 4 catches, 72 yards, and 1 TD. And if you watch the game, he looked good out there. He had good hands. He's a big body. He moved well. He created space. He looked like a great fit out there. I think he's a guy that you need to begin to consider picking up down the stretch. Definitely, if you're in a dynasty league that requires you to have a tight end, he's somebody you should stash. Jack Doyle, available in 21% of leagues. Today he has 7 catches for 94 yards. He's Jacoby Brissett's favorite target at this point. Now, he plays the Jaguars this week coming up. That's a tough matchup, but like I just previously mentioned, that Zay Jones was able to get open and get some yards, so he's a guy that you could play. I would roll out versus the Jags. Hunter Henry disappeared for a few weeks there. People are excited this year for him. Started off a little quiet, got hot for a couple games, cooled down. It's been very confusing for us. Well, this week he goes out, has 5 catches, 76 yards, and a TD. He's available in 33% of leagues. I think he's a guy that you need to consider. He's got a decent matchup this week. And Julio Thomas, available in 73% of leagues, plays Denver. Denver gives up a lot of points to tight ends, so he's a good play this week coming up here. Here's some defenses. Now, there's a lot of defenses that are great plays out there. Obviously, the Jags are a great defense to snap, but I'm not going to talk about any defenses that aren't available. These are defenses that are more readily available out there. And 2 defenses that are readily available that have good matchups this week are the Rams versus the Cardinals and the Chargers versus the Browns. Those 2 are readily available, and those are 2 good matchups, so you can probably get them. Other ones that are more readily available aren't good defenses or they don't have good matchups. So there's some things to consider. Thanks for putting up with me with my cold today. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys made the fantasy ball playoffs. Look forward to continuing to hear from you guys in the future. God bless and take care.